Some heroes gain their power from a far darker source. Imagine a world where the line between hero and demon blurs, where desperate pacts are made with the denizens of hell itself, and the cost of extraordinary abilities might be your very soul. Welcome to the terrifying reality of superheroes who've bargained with the devil. Starting things off with Blade, the iconic Marvel Comics character, is a complex and tragic figure whose origins are intertwined with the dark world of vampires and demonic forces. His unique abilities and relentless pursuit of justice have made him a fan favorite for decades. Blade's story begins with a fateful encounter between his mother and a powerful vampire. In a desperate attempt to save her life, his mother made a deal with the creature, unwittingly setting in motion a chain of events that would forever alter Blade's destiny. As a result of this pact, Blade was born with a unique condition. He possessed the enhanced abilities of a vampire, such as superhuman strength, speed, agility, and accelerated healing, yet he retained his humanity and aversion to blood. This hybrid nature has earned him the moniker Daywalker. Throughout his life, Blade has faced numerous challenges posed by the vampire underworld. His exceptional skills as a martial artist and weapons expert have made him a formidable opponent against these bloodthirsty creatures. Armed with his signature swords and an arsenal of vampire-killing weaponry, he has tirelessly hunted down and eliminated countless vampires, earning the respect and fear of the undead. However, Blade's encounters with vampires are not the only threats he has faced. His unique abilities have also drawn the attention of demonic forces, which have sought to exploit his power for their own nefarious purposes. These demonic entities, often lurking in the shadows of the supernatural realm, have presented Blade with even greater challenges, forcing him to confront the darkest corners of existence. Daredevil, the man without fear, is no stranger to inner turmoil. But in the Daredevil father storyline, Matt Murdock's unwavering faith and stringent morality are pushed to their absolute limits. A malevolent demonic entity, sensing vulnerability in Murdock's grief and anger, seizes the opportunity to tempt the hero, leading to a harrowing exploration of his beliefs and the very foundation of his identity. The story unfolds with Murdock grappling with the recent passing of his father, Battling Jack Murdock. Haunted by his father's failures and the weight of his own dual life, Daredevil finds himself questioning his purpose and the cost of his relentless pursuit of justice. This internal struggle creates an opening for the demonic force, which manifests as a sinister figure offering solace and power. The demon preys on Murdock's doubts and insecurities, whispering temptations of forbidden knowledge, effortless victory over his enemies, and even the chance to resurrect his father. These offers chip away at Daredevil's resolve, forcing him to confront the darkness within himself and the fine line between righteous anger and destructive fury. As the demonic influence grows stronger, Daredevil's actions become increasingly erratic and violent. He brutally dispatches criminals, disregards due process, and alienates his closest allies. This descent into darkness mirrors the struggles of his father, a boxer who compromised his morals for the sake of his family. The internal conflict reaches its climax when the demon reveals its true intentions: to corrupt Daredevil completely and turn him into an instrument of chaos. Faced with this horrifying prospect, Murdock musters all his remaining strength and faith to reject the demon's temptations. He realizes that succumbing to darkness would not only betray his own values, but also dishonor his father's memory. In a climactic confrontation, Daredevil confronts the demon, not with physical force, but with the unwavering strength of his faith and the belief in his own capacity for good. This spiritual battle ultimately leads to the demon's banishment, leaving Murdock battered but not broken.
At our halfway point, we have Selene. Selene, known as the Black Queen of the Hellfire Club, is one of Marvel's oldest and most powerful mutants, with an origin stretching back literally thousands of years. Born to a tribe that recognized her unique powers, Selene's mother passed at her birth, and the elders commanded the tribe to sacrifice themselves to the little Selene, allowing her to feed on their life force and become their sole survivor. Over the millennia, Selene has wandered the world using her psychic vampirism to sustain her immortality, and has been responsible for countless atrocities, including commanding an entire city by force, entire cities such as Nova Roma, triggering the eruption of Mount Vesuvius, and orchestrating wars for her own gain. Among her most notorious acts is the Necrotia event, where she resurrected millions of deceased mutants from Genosha, absorbing their souls to ascend to godhood and waging a war against the X-Men with her undead army. army. Selene's legacy is defined by her insatiable hunger for souls, manipulation of powerful organizations like the Hellfire Club, and a body count that ranks among the highest in X-Men history. In spot 4, we have Dark Phoenix. Not Jean Grey as like a whole person, specifically we're talking Dark Phoenix. Dark Phoenix is the villainous form of Jean Grey, a powerful mutant who becomes host to the cosmic Phoenix Force, a vast nexus of energy. Jean's psyche is twisted and she transforms into Dark Phoenix, a destructive and uncontrollable entity. One of her darkest moments, and perhaps the most infamous, is when Dark Phoenix consumes an entire star to replenish her power, causing a supernova that destroys the Debari planet and annihilates their entire alien race. This act marked a turning point in her story, leading to her eventual sacrifice. Overwhelmed by the destruction that she caused and the threat that she poses, Jean chooses to save the universe from further harm. Dark Phoenix remains one of the most tragic and complex villains in the X-Men saga, embodying the struggle between immense power and the loss of self-control. Getting into our top 3 today, we have Sebastian Shaw. Sebastian Shaw is one of the X-Men's most dangerous foes. A traumatic event triggered the manifestation of Sebastian's mutant ability, the power to absorb kinetic energy and convert it into superhuman strength. Driven by ambition and intellect, Shaw quickly rose from humble beginnings, getting rich through his company Shaw Industries, which specialized in defense contracts and munitions. His wealth and influence led to his recruitment into the secretive Hellfire Club, where he ultimately seized control as the ruthless Black King, manipulating both mutants and humans to achieve that goal. He was instrumental in funding and advancing the Sentinel program, designed to hunt and end mutants, using his position to control and weaponize anti-mutant sentiment for his own ends. His ambition led him to betray and end rivals within the Hellfire Club. Despite frequent defeats and betrayals on his part, Shaw remains a symbol of ruthless ambition, manipulation, and the dark potential of unchecked power within the Marvel Universe. But today's runner-up is none other than William Stryker. Stryker is driven by a fanatical hatred of mutants that stems from a deeply personal and tragic origin. Stryker's life took a dark turn when his wife gave birth to a mutant son. Horrified by his child's nature, Stryker ended both the wife and son, then attempted to end himself but survived, and interpreted that as a sign that he was chosen by God to wage war against mutants. Okay, this conviction led him to become a charismatic televangelist and the founder of the Purifiers, a parliamentary group dedicated to mutant ending. He orchestrated the abduction and brainwashing of Professor Xavier, aiming to use his telepathic powers to exterminate all mutants, a plan that forced the X-Men to ally with their enemy at the time, Magneto, to stop him. He also attempted to publicly end Kitty Pryde on live TV, only to be stopped by law enforcement. Over the years, Stryker escalated. He was resurrected as a cyborg, led new incarnations of Weapon X, and oversaw horrific experience to create mutant-ending cyborgs and even Hulk mutant hybrids. Despite his evolving methods and occasional brushes with the supernatural and technological, Stryker remains defined by his relentless intolerance. And finally, in the top spot today is Magneto. Max Eisenhart, better known as Magneto, is one of Marvel's most complex and truly tragic villains. Born to a Jewish family in Germany in the 1920s, Max's early life was marked by the horrors of the Big Event during World War II. His family was captured by the evil army and sent to the camps, where Max witnessed the ending of his loved ones and was forced to assist his captors in operating the camp's machinery, a trauma that caused the emergence of his mutant powers. After the war, he adopted the name Eric Lenscher and tried to build a new life, but tragedy struck again when his daughter Anya passed in a fire caused by an anti-mutant mob, an event that pushed him over the edge, and in a fit of rage, Max unleashed his powers, ending those responsible and cementing his path as Magneto, the self-declared protector of mutant kind willing to use any means necessary. His darkest moments include founding the Brotherhood of Mutants to wage war against humanity, acts of mass violence, and a willingness to sacrifice innocence for his cause, all fueled by the conviction that mutants must dominate to avoid the persecution he once suffered. Magneto's story is defined by loss, vengeance, and the enduring scars of his past, making him a villain whose actions are inseparable from the pain and injustice of his origins. Hot off the press at number 10, we have a clone of Nathaniel Essex, one of the X-Men's most enduring and sinister foes. So sinister, he had no choice but to become Mr. Sinister. Originally a brilliant Victorian-era scientist obsessed with evolution and genetic perfection, Essex's descent into villainy began after his wife, Rebecca, passed on cursing him as sinister upon discovering all of his unethical experiments. Transformed and empowered by the ancient mutant apocalypse, Essex adopted the name Mr. Sinister and dedicated his life to manipulating mutant kind, most infamously through cloning, genetic experimentation, and psychological manipulation. Among his darkest acts is orchestrating the ending of the Morlocks, a peaceful underground mutant community, one of the X-Men's worst tragedies. Sinister's cruelty extended to manipulating Cyclops' life, kidnapping his son, Nathan Summers, later Cable, and erasing the existence of Madeline Pryor, a clone that he created, leading to the catastrophic Inferno event. In the modern Krakoan era, Sinister reached new lows by corrupting the mutant resurrection process, secretly implanting his own control over resurrected mutants, and attempting to seize control of mutant society, demonstrating his relentless ambition and utter disregard for life. Up next, at number 9, we have Victor Creed, aka Sabretooth. Sabretooth is one of Marvel's most notorious villains, infamous for his brutality and deep-seated rivalry with Wolverine. Born in the late 19th century, Creed's early life was marked by harm and violence and just like really horrible parenting. Sabretooth's origin is further complicated by memory tampering from shadowy organizations like Weapon X, making much of his past just unreliable. His darkest moments are numerous and chilling. He ended Silver Fox, which was Wolverine's lover, and then manipulated an angry Wolverine and grieving Wolverine into ending like an entire town of people. As a merc, Creed became known as the Slasher, ending indiscriminately for pleasure and sport. His cruelty extended to those close to him, and every year he would surprise Wolverine, no matter where he was in the world, for his birthday and just do something evil and diabolical. Silver Fox being the first of the many. Sabretooth's legacy is defined by his relentless savagery, psychological torment of Wolverine, and a history of betrayal and personal tragedy that cements his place among the X-Men's evilest villains. At spot number 8 is the diva that audiences were introduced to last year in Deadpool and Wolverine, Cassandra Nova. She made her big screen debut almost a year ago, but she has been causing problems since her 2001 debut in the comics. Cassandra Nova is one of the X-Men's most chilling villains, born as the Mumadrai, a parasitic psychic entity, at the very moment that Charles Xavier was conceived. She is, in essence, Xavier's dark twin, created from the same genetic material but embodying pretty much everything that he opposes. Even before birth, Cassandra's evil presence was so overwhelming that it triggered Charles's powers to try and eliminate the threat. Surviving this, she spent years reconstructing her body and plotting revenge. Later in life, Cassandra ended up orchestrating the use of Sentinels to end over 16 million mutants, an act of pure, calculated evil that proved that she is one of the most ruthless adversaries the X-Men have ever faced. Her combination of immense psychic power, deep-seated hatred, and utter lack of empathy makes Cassandra Nova a terrifying force. I think it's safe to say that in her case, evil can be born. At number 7 today, we have Madeline Pryor, one of Marvel's most tragic and complex villains. Created by the villain Mr. Sinister as a clone of Jean Grey, Madeline was engineered using Jean's genetic material and implanted with false memories, her entire existence designed to manipulate Cyclops, Scott Summers, into falling in love with her and fathering a child, Nathan Summers, later known as Cable, whose genetic potential Sinister coveted. Initially unaware of her origins, Madeline lived a pretty normal life, marrying Scott and starting their family. However, her world fell apart when Jean Grey returned, leading Scott to abandon Madeline and Nathan, which began her descent into darkness. The revelation of her true nature as a clone and a pawn shattered Madeline. Demonic forces exploited her pain and resentment and awakened latent psychic powers and transformed her into the Goblin Queen. In her darkest moment, Madeline struck a deal with demons to open a portal to Limbo, unleashing a demonic invasion on New York City. She attempted to sacrifice her own family, along with others, to cement her power to keep the portal open, but was ultimately stopped by the X-Men. Coming in at number 6, we have Donald Pierce. Donald Pierce is a notorious supervillain, best known as a cyborg and relentless enemy of the X-Men. Born into immense wealth, Pierce inherited his family's fortune and industrial empire, which opened the doors for him to join the elite Hellfire Club, where he rose to the rank of White Bishop. Despite his high standing, Pierce harbored a deep-seated hatred for mutants, joining the Hellfire Club not for power or prestige, but with the secret goal of exterminating its mutant members. His transformation into a cyborg began after a brutal defeat at the hands of Cable, which left him grievously injured and dependent on advanced prosthetics, fueling his self-loathing and further intensifying his anti-mutant crusade. Pierce helped create and lead the Reavers, an army of cybernetically enhanced criminals whose sole purpose was the eradication of mutants. Under his command, the Reavers captured Wolverine, torturing him before Jubilee intervened to save that hero. Even after apparent deaths and defeats, Pierce repeatedly resurfaced, orchestrating evil actions and mass endings, cementing his legacy as one of the X-Men's most relentless and ruthless foes.
Halfway through into number 5, Green Arrow. Created by Grant Morrison and Arne Jorgensen, the most recognized version of Prometheus made his first appearance in New Year's Evil Prometheus from 1998. Commonly an adversary of the Justice League, Prometheus would also serve as an enemy to Batman, Green Arrow, and Midnighter. Prometheus possesses no superhuman abilities, but has undergone intense physical and mental training, and utilizes an extensive range of equipment and technology like Batman does. However, Prometheus is probably the most known in the Green Arrow community for being the start of the Trial of Green Arrow storyline, commonly known as the worst Green Arrow storyline of all time, where Oliver kills Prometheus after he bombs Star City, kills Roy's daughter, then ends up cutting off Roy's arm, and then Oliver gets put on trial for his death. Yeah, you can say that was Oliver going dark, excluding the show. And at 4, Hulk. Oh man, okay, this is an interesting one. Hulk, aka Maestro from the Future Imperfect storyline, is actually the worst version of the Hulk you can understand, okay, like morally speaking. He's from the Old Man Logan series, but first appearing in the Incredible Hulk Future Imperfect number 1 from 1992, Maestro possesses Bruce Banner's intellect and the Hulk's everything else. After a devastating nuclear war destroyed most of the human race, the radiation from that war ended up basically supercharging the Hulk and turning him into an even more powerful version. Ended up violently attacking his cousin, She-Hulk, which resulted in the birth of the Hulk gang. I don't want to get into that, but at this point I kind of have to because this number's about him. It's absolutely terrifying, okay? Because while the Hulk is already a freaking monster, add on to that more radiation, more power, the destruction of the country. Yeah, okay? And not only that, but this was 1992. God, they ran the whole Hulk gang thing in 1992. Thank God I wasn't alive. Getting close to the end in number 3, The Flash. Barry Allen, aka The Flash, is one of the former heroes who turned into a bloodthirsty vampire after Batman spread the vampire plague throughout the world of Earth 43. He confronts Wally West from a different world and attempts to kill him, but before he can succeed, he was killed by Roy Harper in this world, who shot him with wooden arrows in the back. Yep, that's right, wooden arrows count as stakes. I wonder if these were T-bone. But even if he went down easily, that doesn't mean that he wasn't powerful, okay? Since, you know, a vampire with the powers of the Flash, and not just any Flash, Barry Allen, the literal Speed Force itself, basically, who can run so hard that he can compress air molecules under his feet and run up the air like a staircase. Yeah, I don't think you really need to think about why that's terrifying. If he hadn't have been killed by Roy, he would have wiped out humanity, okay? And that's why they had to kill him off, so that didn't happen, okay? There was no way to defend against that, especially since Batman was the one who turned him. But ultimately, in number 2, Captain America. In a surprising turn of events, Captain America actually found himself entangled with the group of Hydra, a longtime foe that he had fought against for years and was basically his most iconic villain. This unexpected twist occurred in 2016's Captain America Steve Rogers number 1, when Cap uttered the shocking phrase, "Hail Hydra," after callously pushing a fellow ally out of an airplane. Prior to this, Cap had experienced a significant transformation due to the actions of the Iron Nail. The super soldier serum in Cap's bloodstream was neutralized, causing his body to age, aligning with his actual age of 90 years old. But this resulted in him assuming the persona of Old Man Cap, similar to his portrayal at the end of Endgame. For a period of time, he was like this, but it eventually was changed with the Cosmic Cube, which is the Tesseract in the movies, causing him to just go nuts, okay? He transformed into a 4-year-old and then was manipulated by Red Skull into believing that Hydra was good, so then like Koblik restored Cap to his actual like proper physique and whatever. They also made him loyal to Hydra, so yeah, it wasn't well received. And finally, in at number 1, Hal Jordan. I think at this point, it's justified that thanks to the Emerald Twilight from back in 1994, Hal Jordan's gonna be on this list. The story begins with Hal Jordan holding a doll in the middle of what was once Coast City. Grief-stricken, he recreates the city using his power ring, including its deceased inhabitants, including his father, violating the Green Lantern Corps code, which forbids lanterns from using their powers for personal gain. Hal is contacted by the Guardians of the Universe who reprimand him, but furious, Hal drains the holographic projection's energy and then travels to O and drains the central power battery to reconstruct Coast City. Green Lanterns are sent to stop him. Hal destroys all of them. His rampage then continues. He almost destroys a timeline with this. Even Guy Gardner, who wears Sinestro's yellow ring, was scared of the devastation that Hal was causing. I'm gonna call that going dark. He started calling himself Parallax. Have you seen that movie? That's not a good thing to call yourself, dude. Just like get a proper mask next time. In its end, Spider-Man. Spider-Carnage isn't just another Spider-Man villain. He's actually an alternate version of Spider-Man, hailing from one of many Earths. This character was introduced in the 90s Spider-Man animated series. My favorite Spider-Man animated series, might I add. This Peter's life was actually very similar to the main Spider-Man, except this version also lost Aunt May as well as Uncle Ben and developed a resentment for humanity because of it. And then he had to deal with a clone, which definitely sucked. Until he and the clone learned that who they thought was the clone, who was going by Bill Riley, could actually be the real Peter Parker. That broke Peter, or well, the real Peter. And a Carnage symbiote from another universe actually sensed this hatred and resentment, and through a portal created by Jonathan Ohm, it bonded with Peter, driving him even more insane, and then he started calling himself Spider-Carnage. From my understanding, this character hasn't been seen since that final episode, but I want him to make a comeback, okay? Like, add this character to the MCU, or like let Andrew Garfield fight the Carnage symbiote so that he can have the Spider-Carnage or something, please. And then Superman. While this seems like something that any version of Superman would do if they turned bad, it's actually interesting to see that only the Injustice version of Superman did it. Yeah, you know, after Joker blew up Metropolis and killed his wife and unborn child, Superman killed him, and then, you know, started a whole regime. But after getting fed up with Batman leading a resistance against that regime, Superman just also told the world that Batman was really Bruce Wayne. And do you want to know how he did it? Like a press conference, a worldwide news message, a Mysterio-like video? No. The dude frickin' added him on Twitter. Superman, in just 4 simple words, just tells the world that Batman is Bruce Wayne. Using those 4 words, actually, from the official Superman Twitter account. The dude doesn't even, like, use his Clark Kent Twitter. Man, he's still hiding his identity, but just is like, yeah, no, it's Bruce. 2.5 million retweets and 3.5 million likes. It was definitely #1 on trending. At least until, like, Kim K posted a pic in, like, a Batman costume to capitalize on the news and had, like, the champagne going. Then Batman would be #2 on trending. That's probably what would happen, honestly. And it ate Scarlet Witch. Considering how the entirety of House of M is meant to be about how one person changed reality, I think it's fairly safe to say that she's a powerful hero even if she isn't a hero all the time. Like in Multiverse of Madness, for example, when she somehow was able to send demons and monsters across different dimensions to attack America Chavez, but couldn't just go to those dimensions herself, even if she was the villain in that scenario. She was still able to take on the Illuminati of that universe. Okay, she was able to easily take them all down. She's an extremely powerful mutant, whether she's on your side or the side against you, but also falling boulders can kill Captain Marvel. Look, the only limit to Wanda's abilities is, in any incarnation of her, is her brain. And like, that's my one gripe with Multiverse of Madness, okay? Like, the whole point to getting America is to like be able to cross dimensions, but she's literally able to do that. And also, you captured a whole city into your own personal TV show and brought your dead Infinity Stone power boyfriend back from the dead for it, okay? I think you can easily handle any illness that your son ends up getting. And in the whole House of M thing, you literally rewrite reality so that there are actual kids that you can live with and raise, okay? So you've been a villain. And it's 7, Batman. When Ares, the Greek god of war, created a helmet that amplified his powers 100-fold, war broke out in an effort to stop him. For 2 years, Batman and Wonder Woman fought side by side to get close enough to attempt to stop Ares. It was during this war where Bruce and Diana actually fell in love. They and their allies made a pledge to kill the god of war and end his reign of terror once and for all, and when they finally mounted the attack to get to Ares, the two were able to get the helmet off the war god. But Diana was incapacitated, causing Batman to believe that she had died. Driven by grief, grief yet again, Bruce put on the helmet of the god of war to defeat Ares, despite being warned of its corrupting influence. Believing that he could wield it mercifully while making war fair and just, he succeeded in killing Ares, but then turned into a merciless warrior who just destroyed the world, despite that learning that Wonder Woman had actually survived and was only stunned. Kingdom Come, man. That's nuts. And at 6, Doctor Strange. In the midst of the Infinity War, Doctor Strange found himself resorting to the forbidden knowledge contained within the Darkhold. Desperately seeking a means to overcome the formidable Thanos, within his pages he stumbled upon the Dreamwalking spell, which granted him the ability to traverse alternate universes. Tragically though, Strange's meddling inadvertently triggered an incursion, resulting in the utter annihilation of another universe. Recognizing the dire consequence of his actions, Doctor Strange ultimately renounced the corrupting influence of the Darkhold, taking responsibility for his actions, and entrusting the safeguarding of the tome with the Illuminati. Together they sought out the Book of Vishanti, harnessing its power to defeat Thanos, but to prevent any further repercussions, Doctor Strange submitted to execution at the hands of Black Bolt. Meanwhile, the Darkhold found its new sanctuary within the Sanctum Sanctorum of New York, carefully protected by Mordo, who swore an oath to prevent dangerous tomes from falling into the wrong hands. But again, it was evil Doctor Strange. Okay, we saw it in Multiverse of Madness. We saw it in the What If storyline. Doctor Strange has gone dark multiple times, alright? Sorry.
Deadringer can take on the form of any dead body he touches, and it's a lot more useful and can cause way more problems than you might think. Deadringer is a mutant. His mimicking abilities are not reserved for people, you can also mimic animals. He discovered his abilities by touching his deceased cat and then father, which is traumatic. Choosing to use his powers for evil, he started to remove pieces of heroes from their graves, because when he touches a deceased super person, he gets their powers. Deadringer is limited to one person at a time, and if he wants to revisit the body of someone, he has to touch them again. And that is hard when you take decaying into account. A major inconvenience. Deadringer's most famous battle was when he and his partner, Super Patriot, became Porcupine and Captain America to destroy Cap's reputation. The two staged a fight at a charity gala and deliberately hurt the crowd. The pair were eventually arrested. Sticks and Stones have very different origin stories, but are now connected for life. Sticks was originally homeless, and Stone was on a team of scientists doing experimental cancer research. The team of scientists were offering compensation for anyone willing to be experimented on, so Sticks signed up. Stone thought that someone could become immune to cancer the same way you can become immune to snake bites. Of course, he did run the test on Sticks, and of course, it ended in the worst way. Sticks became a walking cancer, decaying any organic matter he comes in contact with. Awful outcome, but at least Stone's theory was right. Sticks was immune to cancer himself. Stone felt really bad about this and vowed to find a cure for Sticks. Somewhere along the way, we actually don't know how it happened, but Stone turned into a big stone monster, and with that he gained the ability to decay any inorganic matter. One hero that did fight them that I think was a worthy match was Deadpool. Bloodshadow is a very cool villain that I don't want to meet, but I do think they should bring back. He was known for facing off against Wolverine. Bloodshadow was capable of telepathy and a trained martial artist. He is also very familiar with the human body. He knew all its deadly pressure points like the back of his hand. He combined this trio of skills into an interesting fighting style. He would use his telepathy to determine an opponent's next move, his martial arts training to counter it, and his knowledge of the human body to determine which deadly pressure points would be exposed so he could hit them. The man was clearly incredibly intelligent. He won most of his fights quickly and without any harm done to him using his unique method. Unfortunately for Bloodshadow, his telepathy was a bit too powerful in a fight with Wolverine, and he accidentally unlocked Wolverine's base feral animalistic instincts. No one can survive those, not even Bloodshadow. I would love to see him brought back though to fight against other Marvel heroes, just to see what happens. Up next is the Sphinx. He started out as a simple wizard, but then became wielder of the Cawstone and eventually a cosmic class threat. After finding the Cawstone, it quickly attached itself to his forehead, and it came with a long list of pretty cool powers, including immortality, telepathy, flight, teleportation, illusion creation, and more. One of his underutilized powers is his ability to alter reality. He usually keeps it on the less traumatic side, but could cause some real problems if he wanted to. Sphinx eventually grew tired of being immortal and decided to search for a way to get the stone off. He did so in a manner that gained the attention of the Fantastic Four, now dead set on stopping him. They called in Galactus, who defeated Sphinx, stripping him of his power, then sent him back in time in a time loop to live his life again and again. However, they forgot that Sphinx already existed at that time, so now there were two. Together they developed a way to prevent his future fate, and he almost succeeded. He lived on and and continued being the worst. When I came across Creed Harley Quinn, or Hyena, in my research for this video, I literally thought to myself, oh yeah, he's going in, he sounds like a total nightmare. We all know Sabretooth, the thorn in Wolverine's side. We all know the Joker, Batman's permanent headache. In a burst of creativity, Marvel and DC decided to combine these two to create the most unhinged creature on the planet. Hyena has all the powers of the two villains, plus he also just looks creepy. Sabretooth on his own is insane, but Joker is on another level when it comes to lack of mental sanity. The two literally took the worst, or I guess the best, of the other in this Frankenstein tale. So Marvel and DC had no choice but to combine Batman and Wolverine, creating Darkclaw. At least we can all sleep soundly knowing that someone capable enough is out there to stop Hyena from ending his universe. Hopefully people will start talking about this crossover again, because it would be pretty cool, and it's hard to believe it faded into obscurity. Grail has made her triumphant and destructive return this year. As the daughter of Darkseid, prophesies to basically end the world, we should expect nothing less. Her moment was probably the Darkseid War from Justice League Volume 2. She nearly destroyed the team. She was literally named the goddess of anti-life. Not even her own family is safe. After the death of her father, she kidnapped someone's super baby and made said baby absorb a bunch of powers, also making that baby's growth accelerate, turning them into the new Darkseid mid-battle, a Darkseid that was 100% under her control. The fight only ended when Grail opened her eyes, blasting through her mom and her dad, creating a huge explosion. It looked like she was gone forever, however that was not the case. Turns out she just went to some underground cave with her baby father and is now raising him down there until he's ready to break stuff again. She is actively speeding up his growth by attacking and ending the children of Zeus, so she's evil through and through. Another villain that has had a bit of a comeback this year is Varnae. Varnae is thought to be the first ever vampire in history, being turned into one in a ritual performed by Atlantean sorcerers about 70,000 years before Jesus. He also has the usual vampire powers, strength and speed, etc., but also a healing factor, telepathy, shape-shifting, magic, dark force manipulation, and more. In Time Spirits 4, Varnae asked the Crystal Skull, the thing that is supposed to be the truth of man, if he was pure evil, and the answer was yes. It was also confirmed in this comic that the only way there will be an end to Varnae is if he chooses it, so he is pretty much all-powerful, aside from all the regular vampire weaknesses, of course. For a long time, Varnae was vulnerable to sunlight and silver and religious symbols of gods that only existed when he was turned into a vampire, so like crosses wouldn't do anything. The bad news is, when Varnae possessed Blade in the recent Blood Hunt story, he lost all these weaknesses. He was only able to be defeated after a long battle against the Avengers and being attacked by a member of Blade's bloodline and someone of his own bloodline. So this next villain has quite the name, so please be prepared. Boss Glitter was the main antagonist of the forgotten DC series about the Heckler. Don't let the ridiculous name fool you. Boss Glitter is a ruthless mob boss. He just happens to have a little bit of flair. He uses old Mardi Gras masks to hide his face, and he controls the city by planting just like a bunch of lieutenants that manage different parts of it for him. The problem is, the Heckler keeps defeating those lieutenants and throwing them in jail, so naturally Boss Glitter wants the Heckler to heckle no more. When his lieutenants fail to end his comedy act, Boss Glitter takes matters into his own hands, and this is a great example of being ruthless with a dramatic flair. Glitter sends a bouquet of flowers to Heckler, who is in the hospital, but with a bomb in them. The Heckler does still survive though, and we don't hear from Boss Glitter anymore because the comics had bad sales, so the whole series was cancelled. But Boss Glitter, he does now live in my head, rent-free. Up next is ironically Overshadow. Barely anyone knows who he is or have forgotten about the villain, and yet he might be one of the most powerful villains Marvel has ever created. Overshadow got his powers from the White Event, and because Philip Nolan Voight was climbing a mountain while it happened and was therefore closest to space, he got the most power. He is able to replicate the powers of any paranormal he encounters. Not only that, but he gets to keep the powers after replication. And not only that, but he can then magnify them. The only power he could not replicate, which ended up being his undoing, was the powers of the Star Brand. I think people forget Overshadow simply because the comics he was in weren't very popular as other Marvel stuff, and they were the DP7 comics of Earth 148,611. Spotlight on Graviton. He gained the ability to mentally control gravity after a failed teleportation experiment. At first, when Graviton started being evil, no one really knew because his lab was in the Canadian Rockies, but then someone sent a distress signal to the Avengers, so they got involved. The Avengers thought this was going to be a really easy win for them. The guy was just a human, right? Wrong. Graviton literally threw the Avengers around and won the fight. He ended up destroying himself by making a building collapse on him, and it would take a while before he was able to separate all the atoms again. After that, he had amnesia, but eventually returned to a life of crime.
Number 5. Cyborg Batman. Yes, there is a Batman-Cyborg hybrid who is part of the Batman Who Laughs Dark Knights, and yes, he is terrifyingly awesome. Murder Machine first appears in Dark Days the Casting in the Dark Multiverse Earth -44. In this world, this evil Batman cyborg comes about after the passing of Alfred Pennyworth in the Batcave by a group of Batman's villains. As Bruce Wayne's father figure and closest friend, Bruce took this loss hard, and he blamed himself. He asked Cyborg to make an Alfred Cyborg AI called Alfred Protocol in order to help Bruce like Alfred used to do. Unfortunately, like most AI in fiction, it went kinda mad with its directive of protecting Batman. It spread like a virus, took down all of the villains and then all of the heroes, and even took over Batman's own body since it didn't believe that he could protect himself well enough. And Batman just didn't want to be separated from Alfred, so he was totally cool with it. Number 4. Devastator. On alternate Earth -1, Batman and Superman were pals and everything was dandy. Until one day Superman changed and rampaged, turning on humanity. Superman took out almost everyone, and Batman tried his best to help bring his friend back. But once Superman took out Lois Lane and then cut off Batman's arm, there was really no going back from that point. Batman decided to inject himself with the Doomsday virus, turning him into the Devastator, powering him up enough to take out Superman but also making him lose all sympathy. He still retains all the knowledge of Bruce Wayne plus the fighting skill, and he acts as the muscle for the Dark Knights. Truly a monstrous and terrifying Batman. Number 3. Eradicator Lois. For this point, we are going back in time to the infamous death of Superman. When Superman fell in the fight between himself and Doomsday, it didn't hit anyone as hard as it hit Lois Lane. Well, in the Dark Multiverse, something curious happened. After some time passed and Lois saw the effects of a Superman-less world, she eventually traveled to the Fortress of Solitude to return Superman's cape. What she never expected was for the Kryptonian Eradicator to show up. This defender of Krypton is the reason that Superman does eventually come back, placing Clark in the Kryptonian life matrix that was supposed to revive Superman. In this story though, it takes longer than expected, and so, assuming that the revival was a failure, the Eradicator instead places the powers of Superman into the body of Lois Lane. Unfortunately, this is the Dark Multiverse though, and so this newly superpowered Lois Lane throws almost all caution to the wayside and uses her powers recklessly, saving the day, sure, but with no regard for collateral damage or repercussions. She ends wars, feeds the hungry, destroys the military-industrial complex, all that good stuff, but she also wipes out countless lives, including Batman's, and she's even responsible for the fall of Superman again when he does finally return. The whole story is pretty tragic, but that also makes it one of the best ones to come out of the Dark Multiverse, in my opinion. Number 2, the Batman Who Laughs. The Batman Who Laughs is arguably one of the most dangerous versions of Batman who has ever lived, other than Batman himself. If you don't know yet, he is a Dark Multiverse version of Batman who took down the Joker, but inadvertently infected himself with a strain of Joker toxin. The resulting transformation turns this version of Bruce Wayne into an amalgamation of Joker and Batman. All the intelligence and resourcefulness and martial skill of Batman mixed with the buck-wild, psychotic, murderous mind of the Joker. He is pure chaos and destruction, and he lays waste to his own Bat family and the whole whole Justice League. He has a pack of Jokerized Robins, and he is the leader of the Dark Knights. He is also a lieutenant of the Dark God Barbados, and he convinced Perpetua, the original creator of the multiverse, to choose him as her lieutenant, eventually acquiring cosmic power and becoming an even bigger threat than even Perpetua herself. And finally, in at number 1, it's Saint Batman. As some of you may know, when Bane broke the back of Bruce Wayne in the Batman Nightfall storyline, Bruce was briefly replaced as the Dark Knight in favor of John Paul Valley, otherwise known as the somewhat extreme crime fighter Azrael. Eventually, the status quo was returned and Bruce took the mantle of Batman back, but as you know, in the Dark Multiverse, everything can and will happen, and so of course, we see the dark outcome of what would happen if Bruce never got to take back his cowl. In the Dark Multiverse version of Batman Nightfall, John Paul Valley doesn't return the mantle, and instead, believing himself to be the best successor to the Batman name, he defeats Bruce Wayne and the entire Bat family. Over the next 30 years, John Paul, now going by Saint Batman, has destroyed and rebuilt the city of Gotham. He stripped Bruce of his arms and legs and keeps Bruce on life support, just trying to get Bruce to admit that John Paul was the right choice for the role of Batman. Unfortunately, Saint Batman had crossed the wrong people, and he suffered a pretty brutal defeat at the hands of Lady Shiva, the son of Bane, and a restored cyborg Batman. Starting off the list today at number 10 is Red Death. The Dark Multiverse was given to us largely by telling the story of multiple different versions of Batman who have each been twisted into a corrupted, villainous version of Bruce Wayne. Brought together by the Batman Who Laughs, the Dark Knights are basically like an evil collection of Batman from across the Dark Multiverse, each one standing in or representing a member of the Justice League. Arguably one of the most popular of these Batmen would be Red Death, an evil Bruce Wayne with the powers of the Flash. In his dark reality, Bruce Wayne was pushed to the limit after losing so many of his sidekicks, which should be a good reason for why he should stop recruiting younglings to be his Robins, but I digress. Believing that he needed to be more brutal in his crime fighting and that he would be better at using the Speed Force than Barry Allen, Bruce took down Flash's rogues, took their equipment, and then used it against his fellow Justice Leaguer. Batman then strapped Barry to his Batmobile, fused it together with the Cosmic Treadmill, and then he drove it all into the Speed Force, absorbing Barry and his powers. Bruce, now empowered with the Speed Force and much more evil than he should be, became the Red Death and joined with the Batman Who Laughs and his Dark Knights. Number 9. Last Son. While the majority of characters given to us from DC's Dark Multiverse are alternates of Batman, thanks to the Batman Who Laughs and his Dark Knights, the Dark Multiverse is a place where everything can go wrong with anyone. Probably the most alarming of the Dark Multiverse alternates would be the dark versions of Superman, and the Last Son, in my mind, stands above the rest. This version of Kal-El came from a dark universe corrupted by the Darkest Night, and instead of crash landing straight on Earth from the destruction of Krypton, Superman's rocket got lost and exposed to the cosmic storm of a black hole. When he finally reached his destination, Earth, the last son of Krypton was burning with the energy of 1,000,000 suns. It sounds super cool, and Last Son looks absolutely amazing, but his whole concept is based on Superman's fear of becoming overcharged by the sun, and his capabilities are through the roof. He's terrifying. Number 8. Robin King. Probably the most depraved, psychotic, and disturbing of the Batman Who Laughs posse would have to be the Robin King. Instead of becoming Batman, this young Bruce Wayne lost his parents just like every other, only it was by his own hand. This Bruce was depraved basically from birth, so much so that it even scared his version of Alfred Pennyworth, who still continued to protect the young Wayne. After the passing of Joe Chill and Bruce's parents, the young fella found that he felt mainly cheer from all that altercation. He was inspired by a robin singing and how the bird is known for taking over the nests of other birds. Under that ideology, he began to put together an arsenal and a utility belt, which he would then use to take out police officer James Gordon and Alfred once they were able to prove that Bruce was responsible for the passing of his own parents. Robin King then stuffed the Flash's mom inside Barry's ring, he took out the Arcane family and obtained the Rot, he somehow somehow managed to take out Swamp Thing, and he got away with it all because everyone thought he was just some kid. This guy even obtained and then modified the anti-life equation, a manhunt consisting of Adam Strange, Balloon Buster, Enemy Ace, Firestorm, Hawkgirl, and Hawkman all fell to this Robin King before he was finally recruited by the Batman Who Laughs, and he even posed some resistance to that guy. All this from an untrained Bruce Wayne. It's too much. Number 7, Dawnbreaker. Of all the Dark Knights recently introduced in Dark Knight's Metal, aside from their leader, the Dawnbreaker stands among the others as one of the most creative and possibly terrifying combinations. This blending of Bruce Wayne with Green Lantern, while based on two heroes, is definitely not a good guy. After Bruce Wayne's tragic loss of his parents, the Green Lantern ring comes to him and grants him the powers of a Green Lantern, right there in the alley. Now, if you know Batman, you'll know that he has likely one of the strongest wills on Earth, even though that's not really talked about. So strong, in fact, that it allows him to overpower the programming of the Green Lantern ring and do things that Green Lanterns are not supposed to do, like using his monstrous hard-light constructs to take down criminals permanently, or like taking out the whole Green Lantern Corps and the Guardians of the Universe. Stuff like that. He is a crazy powerful version of Batman, and I think it would be really cool if someone could put him on the big screen, in a sort of superhero horror movie, or something like that. Number 6, The Drowned. Bryce Wayne was the Batwoman of the Dark Multiverse Earth 11, and this vigilante had a romantic relationship with a certain Sylvester Kyle. When Kyle lost his life to rogue metahumans, it flicked a switch inside of Bryce, and she decided to systematically take down every single metahuman she could find. The craziest thing is that she did just that, wiping out every single metahuman who walked on land. But Bryce didn't think about the metahumans of the sea. Just 18 months after taking out the last land-based metahuman, Aquawoman and the Atlanteans revealed themselves and returned to the surface from years of self-imposed exile. While they came in peace, Bryce had such a mistrust of anyone, especially these Atlanteans that were obviously also metahumans. When peace talks devolved to an all-out war, Bryce modified her human form with biochemical augmentations, like the ability to control water, breathing underwater, healing faster, and bolstering her muscular, skeletal, and bodily tissue density. She gave herself a kind of dark hydrokinesis which could corrupt those fighting against her into ravenous sea beasts under her command, and designed her own army of hybridized sea creatures called Dead Water, all of which was bolstered up by the trident that she pried from the cold hands of a completely decimated Aquawoman. She then drowned the world, and it was then that she was contacted by the Batman Who Laughs.
Mark's struggle with his various personalities is more than just a narrative gimmick. Although it is fun to watch and read, this is actually a reflection of the complex emotional and psychological toll that his life has taken. We're literally looking through life through Mark's eyes. Each personality represents a different facet of his trauma, from the violence of Mark's mercenary days to the wealth and success that Steven represents, and also to the gritty survivalist instincts of Jake. It all swirls together in a crazy comic. The interplay between these identities creates an ongoing internal conflict for Mark, which forces him to confront the aspects of himself that he would, of course, rather avoid through these characters. The tension between his various personas shape Moonknight's stories as Mark tries to understand his place in the world while dealing with the consequences of his fractured brain. Now, this internal conflict is not just a battle of personalities, although it does really look like that at times, but this is actually an ongoing battle for Mark's very sense of self. Now, despite their flaws, Mark's personalities are integral to his heroic journey. Each one contributes something valuable to his crime-fighting efforts. Mark, with his tactical training, handles the combat-heavy situations. Steven uses his wealth and status to secure resources and information, and then there's Jake with his street-level connections, and he, of course, gathers intel and keeps tabs on criminals. So together, you smash them all together into one person, these personalities do form a unique, almost a schizophrenic approach to justice. However, Moon Knight's real strength does lie in his ability to pull together these fragments of his brain to form a functional, and sometimes he goes a little too far and just eliminates the competition. Mark Spector's relationship with Khonshu, the Egyptian god of the moon that I mentioned earlier, does add another layer of complexity to his multiple personalities. Yep, we got one more, throw it in there. Khonshu's resurrection of Mark and then further demands for him to act as his earthly avatar creates this power dynamic that is full of tension. I mean, this guy has enough going on and now you got a god telling you what to do? Give me a break. The god manipulates Mark through his various personalities, often using threats and promises of power to sway Mark's decisions. For instance, Khonshu frequently tries to control the actions of Mark's alter egos, sometimes even pushing them to take violent action, all in his name. Sounds like a mean god. This godlike influence further complicates Mark's sense of self and autonomy, as he is constantly battling the god's demand for vengeance, and then his own internal moral compass is going off the rocker. The psychological tug of war between Mark's fractured personalities and of course Khonshu's overpowering, scary presence is a reoccurring theme that has defined the character for decades. The Disney series, let's talk about it. Did you watch it? Did you like it? What didn't you like? Comment down below all your thoughts. In the Disney Plus Moonknight series that came out in 2022, Stephen Grant is given a much more prominent role than he did in the comics, where he was often portrayed as just one of Mark's many personalities. But in the show, Stephen's personality is fully fleshed out, with his humor and intelligence creating a pretty fun and endearing, relatable character. Definitely works for a Disney Plus show. I see why they did it that way. The series also explores Stephen's development as Mark's anchor, often a more sympathetic and introspective look at Mark's struggle with his disorder. The show's take on Stephen gives fans a deeper understanding of Mark's trauma, showing how each personality serves as a coping mechanism, really, for Mark's turbulent past. It's a significant departure from the traditional role Stephen played in the comics, where he was more of a mask that Mark would wear to interact with the world. Here they just flipped it. Mark Spector's multiple personalities. At the heart of Moonknight's identity is Mark Spector's struggle with dissociative identity disorder, a condition that gives rise to multiple distinct personalities. This of course fractured his psyche, and it's the result of Mark's traumatic past as a mercenary. And this of course shapes his every decision in the Marvel Universe. The various personalities do allow Mark to cope with different facts of his life, and they often serve as means of escape from his past violence or guilt. Now each personality carries its own set of skills, outlooks, and of course emotional baggage, which creates a multi-dimensional character who navigates the world through the lenses of these alternate personas. And it's quite interesting for the reader or the viewer. Mark's personalities, his mercenary self, his business persona, and the street-smart Jake Lockley, these are not just a part of him, they're actually his survival mechanisms. Mark Spector is the primary personality that carries the legacy of the Moonknight persona. As a former mercenary, Mark's military training makes him a fierce fighter, but his violent and morally ambiguous past is also a source of deep personal conflict. See, Spector is the most focused and driven of Mark's personalities, and his decision to become Moonknight comes after a brush with passing away in Egypt, where he was then resurrected by the god Khonshu. However, his past as a soldier and mercenary also haunts him, and he often grapples with feelings of guilt and shame. Mark's approach to justice is quite brutal, and I'll be honest, he's pretty unapologetic about it. He uses his combat skills and tactical mind to seek vengeance on those that he deems worthy of punishment. He's a conflicted man driven by the need for redemption. Sounds like a comic book if I've ever heard it. Stephen Grant is the wealthy alter ego. He's perhaps the most well-known of Mark's alternate personalities, though not the most frequently in control. That's the part that's a little sketchy. In stark contrast to Mark's violent tendencies, Stephen represents a more stable and outwardly successful identity. In the comics, Stephen is a wealthy businessman who owns a company and lives a life of luxury on the surface. It's actually the exact opposite of Mark's past as a mercenary. Maybe that's why he came out. This personality allows Mark to interact with high society and often serves as a mask almost, to blend into the more mundane parts of the world, the more human parts. Not a lot of Egypts and gods just going to work. However, Stephen's life is built on a lie, and he often is depicted as being out of his depth in the face of Moonknight's more dangerous missions. While Stephen can be charming and socially adept, he struggles with his own sense of inadequacy, sometimes unaware that his wealth and status are simply just constructs created by Mark's fractured mind, maybe to escape the trauma of his past. Jake Lockley is the street-level investigator. He is Mark Spector's most grounded and street-savvy alter ego. As a cab driver, Jake represents Mark's connection to the underbelly of society, using his position to gather information and keep tabs on the criminal world. Lockley is often portrayed as being gruff and no-nonsense, a personality that fits well with Moonknight's more brutal and, for lack thereof of a better term, a direct approach to justice. It's not the best, but it's something. Unlike Steven, who operates in the world of the rich and powerful, Jake is in the streets. He uses Cab to eavesdrop on conversations and collect intel that could aid Mark's Moonknight persona. Jake's role is crucial to Mark's overall understanding of the criminal landscape, but Jake also serves as a form of escape, another way really for Mark to compartmentalize his troubled life and continue his fight for justice while maintaining some distance from the more chaotic parts of his existence.
The saga of John Constantine's infernal bargain began in the pages of Hellblazer 41, where the chain-smoking magician received the devastating diagnosis of terminal lung cancer. This grim news, delivered in the stark black and white panels of the comic, cast a pall over Constantine's already bleak existence. Facing his own mortality, Constantine, ever the cunning con man, devised a desperate plan. He would leverage his soul, a potent prize in the infernal realm, to bargain with the lords of hell. This audacious scheme unfolded in Hellblazer 41-46, a storyline aptly titled Dangerous Habits. Constantine, with his trademark blend of bravado and desperation, approached the three rulers of hell, the first of the fallen, a primordial entity and Constantine's sworn enemy, and the formidable duo of Beelzebub and Azrael. To each he offered the same deal, his soul in exchange for a cure. The Lords of Hell, intrigued by the prospect of owning such a valuable soul, initially agreed. However, the infernal pact soon unraveled as each demon discovered Constantine's duplicity. The first of the fallen, enraged by the magician's deception and driven by his ancient grudge, vowed to claim Constantine's soul and inflict eternal torment. This conflict threatened to erupt into a devastating war in hell, a prospect that alarmed even the most powerful demons. Beelzebub and Azrael, recognizing the potential for catastrophic destruction, intervened. In a tense standoff depicted in Hellblazer 46, the three Lords of Hell reached an uneasy truce. They reluctantly cured Constantine's cancer, but with a caveat: his soul remained forfeit, a debt to be collected upon his eventual death. The magician, his life extended but his fate sealed, emerged from this infernal bargain with a renewed sense of purpose, albeit tinged with a profound sense of dread. Constantine's reprieve from death, however, was not absolute. His mortal body remained vulnerable, and the promise of his eventual demise hung over him like a sword of Damocles. The Lords of Hell, their hunger for his soul unsatiated, continued to influence his life, manipulating events and orchestrating challenges in a bid to hasten his demise and claim their prize. Doctor Strange, the Sorcerer Supreme of Earth, is a master of the mystic arts, wielding incredible power drawn from various mystical sources. However, his pursuit of knowledge and his dedication to protecting Earth have often led him down morally ambiguous paths. Throughout his history, Doctor Strange has, on numerous occasions, struck bargains with powerful demonic entities, most notably Mephisto, the Lord of Hell. These deals, while often made with noble intentions to gain power to combat greater threats or to save innocent lives, typically come with a heavy price and dire consequences. One of the most significant instances of Doctor Strange's dealings with demons occurred during the Triumph and Torment storyline. Desperate to save his friend and mentor, the Ancient One, from certain death, Strange sought the aid of Mephisto. The demon agreed to resurrect the Ancient One, but in exchange, Strange was forced to participate in a tournament in Mephisto's realm. This tournament pitted Strange against a host of powerful beings, culminating in a confrontation with the monstrous demon Zarathos. While Strange ultimately triumphed and secured the Ancient One's return, the experience left him deeply scarred and further entangled with the demonic realm. Another notable instance occurred during the Doctor Strange Damnation storyline. Following a devastating attack on Las Vegas, Strange attempted to use his magic to restore the city and its inhabitants. However, his spell went awry, inadvertently unleashing Mephisto and his demonic forces upon the city. Mephisto transformed Las Vegas into a twisted version of his own hellish domain, enslaving the city's residents and corrupting its heroes. To rectify his mistake, Strange was forced to confront Mephisto once again, ultimately defeating him with the aid of other heroes. However, the ordeal served as a stark reminder of the dangers of wielding magic without fully understanding its consequences and the potential for even the best intentions to pave the way to hell.